Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of the Not to Talk About podcast. A bit of a different episode today. We're going to be discussing the retain list, which of course came out this week. Before we do that, I just want to remind you all to use the code NTTA10 when you go on FC Stickers, who we're really proud to be working with. Their stickers are unbelievable. I know they've been popping up a lot in different people's videos. I think Jody, there's a sticker from them in one of Jody's videos, but before we get on to the retain list, I just want to ask how you are, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, mate. I would be lying if I said I weren't partially glad that the season was over, especially after obviously Saturday. But yeah, I thought we was gonna have a quiet day. To be honest, I didn't expect the list to come out so soon, but it has. And well, this is why we're here now to rattle through that, I guess. But no, I'm good. How about yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm really good, and I'm glad that we've kind of, like you say, the season's over. But it's nice that we're kind of starting the next season preparations already. Before we get onto that list, let's just quickly talk about the season ticket prices, which were also announced today. I thought I'm going to start by saying I think it's brilliant. I actually think if you look at them, the early bird prices are down. Some price brackets have actually gone down from last year. If you got on the early bird, and obviously renewal is always cheaper. But the fact that obviously we spoke about it not long ago, our not so good friends over the Trent have increased their prices for the second year running by an astronomical amount. And I understand they're in a different division, etc. But we've had a recent promotions and our prices haven't gone up anywhere near proportionally as much as that. So the fact that we've managed to continue to bring in and attract, I would say, families as well, especially because the prices for the younger age brackets are brilliant. But I just wanted to get what your opinion was, your take, because for me it's a great way to get into the new season, because we were worried that would probably go up after having not the best season, but actually I think the club's done the right thing and kept the prices pretty good.
Yeah, the prices are brilliant. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you look at mine and yours age category, I think it's 175. Whereas obviously you go across the road and it's 850. So I mean, with that we've definitely done something right straight away by doing that. And I think I can't remember if it was. I think it was 500 that we sold already on the first day. But I might have been wrong. I could be horribly wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was because I saw it on the BBC Radio Nottingham, the Twitter page. But if that's true, then it just goes to show, really. Like I say it all the time about the fan base. Like we could have finished 20th. I mean, we didn't finish too much better off, don't get me wrong. But we could have finished 20th this season. I still have no doubt that would have been the exact same figure as it was today. But yeah, they definitely have got it right. And like I said to you then, they've got it. They've started off on the right foot of what is obviously a big summer. And I feel like it's not only obviously the season ticket prices, it's a retain list today. It is very, very, two very big, decisions that have already been made. And it just, I don't know, it kind of looks like the club going down the ruthless route. Although obviously the season ticket prices aren't ruthless, they're generous. But the season ended on Saturday, and already we know the prices we're having to pay to watch us next season, as well as who is and who isn't going to be here. And yeah, we've got off to a brilliant start. It's the kind of start we needed to make. Don't get me wrong, to put a smile on fans' face, see with the prices as well. But again, it's never nice to see players move on, and obviously we're going to get into that. So. But yeah, prices, can't complain with them, mate. Absolutely no chance.
Yeah, no, I was a little bit worried when I saw that it was announced because of the performance and the result on Saturday. But I think we can put that behind us. We're not going to talk about that really, because the season's done, it's dusted, and it was what it was on the weekend. And we can. What's brilliant, like you've said, is that we've got two pieces of news to get stuck into straight away. There's no dwelling on the result from the weekend. They haven't let that stew for too long. They've let that they've pushed that aside, and we've got into stuff that matters now. The game on Saturday didn't really matter, as the season was already done. Let's get into the preparation for the new season, and well, it's good to know how much we're going to have to pay to watch the next season, and it's very, very reasonable, I would say. Let's talk about the retain list then. Let's start with the players that are being kept in terms of the players offered contracts. We'll get onto the whole list of players kept at the end. But let's start with Kedwin Scott. Extended. The option was exercised to extend his contract, I believe, for a year. And Geraldo I think they're in discussions at the moment. He's been offered a contract, hasn't said if he's taken that option yet. We don't know how contract terms, how long it's going to be, etc. What are your opinions on those two being, well, Kedwin being extended and Geraldo being offered?
Two correct decisions, mate. It has to be said like that. Obviously, Kedwin had more of a shot, if you like, at League Two than Geraldo did last season. Obviously, given the durations of injuries, but I think it would have been extremely harsh to have let either of them go, especially when you haven't really seen how they fare in League Two. But obviously, with Kedwin, it's goals. That's what he is. There's no doubt about that. Whether it's obviously National League or League Two, I have no doubt Kedwin's going to score goals for us next season. If obviously Touchwood he stays fit, which I'm sure he will. And Geraldo, I'm very happy that he's obviously been offered a new deal. I can't remember if I've said it on the podcast, but I've said it to loads of close friends that if we'd let him go, I could only have seen him ending up somewhere like Walsall, and then by Christmas, everyone's raving about how good he is. I was worried that would have been the case. Obviously, now we don't have to worry about that. Well, unless he chooses not to sign a new deal, although I have already been in contact with him, asking him to sign it. But I'm very happy that he's got one. I'm very happy Kedwin has as well. Again, both of them deserve a crack at League Two, but I feel like the versatility of Geraldo to be able to play in the back line as well as a midfield two is obviously handy to have. There was a time this season where we were struggling for options and bodies, and Geraldo takes two with one stone, I guess. So hopefully he signs a new deal, and obviously Kedwin as well. Obviously going to be here, which is brilliant news because although he came back towards the end of the season, you could tell that it was pretty much just get on the grass and get some football played. And obviously, a full pre-season under his belt is going to be a whole different Kedwin Scott, and it's one that you have to be excited for, mate. You can't say that.
Yeah, well, with Geraldo, obviously firstly with Kedwin, like you say, very excited, very, very excited to see him, and I think the result there is perfect for everyone. An extension that we didn't really have to worry about, and gives him a chance. It gives us a chance to, it's low risk for us to extend him. I think he's a very useful player to have as part of the squad, and hopefully have a more prominent role this season, injury free. In terms of Geraldo, I want to ask you a question in a minute about the contract itself, but in terms of his role as midfield, we're going to get on to Jim in a minute, but I think that's possibly part of the reasoning behind Jim is the fact that Geraldo can play in defence and midfield, so he kind of covers that depth spot for midfield as well. In terms of Geraldo, I want to ask you about his contract. What kind of terms would you be offering him? Do you offer him a 2-year? Is it a 1 year? The thing with offering him a 1 year, I guess, would be that it'd be higher wages, and also, like you mentioned, there'll be teams like your Walsalls, like your Solihull if they go up, that'll probably sit there and think, you know what, we'll offer this guy a 2-year deal, which may be more attractive to him, considering he had that injury this season. He might want to secure his future. So what kind of terms would you be offering him to try and convince Geraldo to stay at this football club?
Well, I'd have offered him a 2-year. That's straight off the bat. And I feel like it would be deserved as well, especially when you consider like the amount of 2-year deals we handed out at the end of last season. I mean, why would you not offer Geraldo one? And I feel like it'd be crazy not to be a 2-year one, in my personal opinion, because if you offer him a year and he has a very good season next, and then you have a pile-on of people wanting to take him on a free transfer, then you have to worry about him signing a new deal. If he's on 2 years and he has a very good season, then you've got him for an extra year if you want him, but obviously you'll have the offers as well. So I think 2 years would be more than justified. In terms, I'm not too sure. Like, it's hard to talk about the footballers' finance sort of thing. You don't know obviously how much they're on a week, etc. I'd imagine it's obviously you would assume that it's more money than what he's on now, because there has to be some form of lure into keeping him here. But I don't think, to be honest with Geraldo, I don't think he ever wanted to move on anyway. Like I said, I was worried that would have been the eventuality because he hasn't played for a large stretch of the season. I was worried that the club were going to let him go, but they haven't, which is obviously very good news. And hopefully he signs a new deal, and then we'll see what he's about. But again, he's obviously someone like Kedwin who's going to need a full pre-season. Obviously, he's a bit behind Kedwin in terms of where he's at because he obviously didn't come back on the grass at all. But I've no doubt when he does that you will probably see why Knox are so keen to keep him on, because he is a good player. And I think someone like Badger, I think people, obviously the last sort of memory you have of him was obviously the Wrexham away game. And obviously, he made obviously a howler in that. But if you can't really judge him by that, especially when you constantly amount of mistakes we've seen from players last season as well. So I'm excited for him because I know that. I guess when any player's injured, you've seen it with Jody as well. They always come back with a point to prove, and I have no doubt that Joldo's going to be one of them.
No, definitely. I think you're right about having a point to prove. Let's go through the players one by one from the players that were released. Let's start with Richard Brindley. He was the first player to announce his departure. He kind of got ahead of the statement and announced that he was leaving, maybe suggesting that he kind of had decided to go rather than, I mean, we might not have offered him a deal anyway, but kind of suggested that the decision was made already. What did you make of that announcement? Obviously a bit early. Did you think it was the right decision? It felt like one of the more obvious ones, I suppose.
It's always difficult when you see players that move on, especially people like Richard Brindley, who came in our first season in the National League. I remember when he signed, it was on the same literal day as Sean Shields. When he signed, it was kind of a double signing, and he's been a servant to the club. What is it? It's been 4 or 5 years he's been in now, and again, although you can have whatever opinion you want on Richard Brindley, I always say it. You'll struggle to find anyone who wants to stay at your football club for 5 years these days, in the way the game's gone. So, I mean, everything has to come to the end, and I feel like it is the right decision to let these sort of players move on now. But what you can't dispute is the commitment, the loyalty, the passion obviously, again, for him, Brindley's, the situation, it was failed promotion, and then promoted. So he stayed through, played a big part of it as well. So can't really dispute him for that. But yeah, obviously he was the first one to come out and say he was leaving, and that for me was the key. Really, like when I realised, okay, like the list was going to come tomorrow, because he would obviously have not mentioned it until he knew that he was coming, obviously the next day. And yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it probably was his decision to leave. I mean, the way he wrote, like he's got eyes on elsewhere now and achievements. Fair play to him. But yeah, I definitely agree. It does feel like one that was made up by him and not the club. Well, it's fair enough, It's a career, 5 years that he spent here. And again, you won't find that many other places, players that want to stay here for 5 years. So fair play to him. And again, like with all of them, I wish him the best, mate. Because again, who doesn't deserve it when you stay here for that long?
Yeah, no, he was one that, obviously, a player that I've mentioned before on this pod has been a player I've got a soft spot for. For whatever reason, I just always really liked him, like the way his style of play, especially in possession and things like that. And look, I wish him all the best. And he's my mum's favourite player, so she'll be good to see him go. And he's a great servant to the club. He's been here for a long, long time, and he's been a big part of the club. And it's a shame to see him go, but I think it was one of those ones that felt at the right time. I don't think there was any complaints from anyone, and I think even in his statement there wasn't too much resentment or disappointment there. It felt like it's the right time for him to move on. There's been someone rumoured said it Chesterfield might go back in for him, or I suggested Woking for him to go and link back up with Michael Doyle, but we'll see where he goes. And obviously, like we say, we wish him all the best. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll see him back at Notts in some capacity, or even get him on the podcast one day. Who knows? It would be a joy, but who knows with that one. But in terms of the next player we're going to talk about, Toby. Again, one of the more, I guess, obvious ones, or ones that obviously he'd been posting on Instagram, things about, I don't know if you saw those, but kind of jokey comments about him extending his deal, etc. But ultimately, it wasn't to be for him. What did you make of him leaving? What did you make of his time at the club? Obviously, it feels like he's not been here. Well, he hasn't been here as long as Brindley, but it feels like he's only been here a short while, and he's gone on a free already.
I always say with people, players like that, and like the personalities is what keeps them around, and he is definitely obviously one of them. Like you say with his comments, I've seen them. I loved it, to be fair, because you need them sort of players, and I know that it can be important to have that sort of like banter in the change room, and Toby provided that for the whole team. And again, obviously it's not going to be the biggest loss because we didn't really see him towards the end of the season. But in terms of morale, there will definitely be a hole without Toby. There's no doubt about that. But I feel like obviously he was only here for 2 years, and I feel like if you look at him when he first joined to how he's left, I feel like he's not only completely changed as a player, but also as a guy. And I feel like I said it about him earlier as well, and I'll say it again. Whoever he ends up at next is going to get 2 for the price of 1 with Toby, because I don't think, obviously, I think it'll be somewhere in the National League that he ends up at. But not only are you getting someone who's been promoted from that league now, you're also getting a very good guy off the pitch, someone who's going to lift you very positively after defeats and be the light of the room and when you've won a game as well. So I don't think if I'm not trying to pitch him to anyone, but if there was a National League club that's thinking about getting Toby, it should be a no-brainer, especially on a free, because you're not only getting a hard-working player on the pitch, you're getting someone who works hard to make sure everyone's smiling at the end of the day, and that's half your battle won in football. When everyone's happy off the pitch, it all unfolds on the pitch in a positive way. So again, look, Toby's Toby. That's the best way you can describe Toby. And obviously if you know Toby, you know what I mean by that. So fair play to him. He took his opportunity to come to Notts County, obviously from Eversley, and did it work out for him? I think you'd say so. He got promoted out of the National League, had a day at Wembley, and everyone loved him at Notts. And if he ever came back for whatever reason, in terms of like for a game, watching a game, or if he ended up at the Nest at whatever point, I don't think he'd have to buy a pint. So fair play to him, mate.
No, definitely, everyone does love him, and another one that maybe I don't want to keep pushing these people for the podcast, but you genuinely think would be a brilliant guest. I think we might not get much of a word in with him because obviously he is a brilliant character and that could probably host his own podcast. He's that type of character, but yeah, again, wish him all the best. And let's talk about Luther. Obviously, you're one of the younger players, one of our promising players that was coming through at one point. He's been released as well. Again, just to use your phrase, a penny for your thoughts on him, because he obviously has been let go, and a player that I guess we never really got to see too much of or see the best of him, really.
Yeah, that's very fair to say. Look, he's a good young player. He's got a lot of potential still, and I really hope it works out for him. I've spoken to him a number of times on a personal level, and every single time he's been brilliant to speak to. And I know obviously his dad's quite active on Twitter as well. So again, look, it's hard to see people leave because of what they leave behind, and it's tough. But and maybe it's harsh as well. I know I had a few friends who messaged and said it was a bit harsh to let Luther go, but club said it themselves. He's got to go somewhere else to push his potential. And I feel like again, anyone in the National League who wants someone to play out wide with a bit of trickery, Luther's your guy. I mean, you saw him at Basford United. The one thing for me is with that Basford loan is he got cut short too soon. You should have just left him there. He was ripping it up every single week, and he looked happy. He went to Boston. Okay, it wasn't the worst loan, but I definitely think it would have been more beneficial for him to be at Basford. I personally think that he has a future in the game, and for as long as he ends up at the right place next, I don't think it'll be the last time you hear his name. So, like with all of him, I do wish him the very best.
Well, while we're on that topic, I just want to quickly ask you about that. You mentioned the loan. I thought it was really interesting because there's been a similar kind of conversation around Lucien Mahovo recently. Obviously, Boston, the same team involved. This time he was on loan, as Lucien was on loan there, and he got cut short, and he came back and didn't really play a couple of minutes, I think. Do you think we have an issue at Notts in terms of cutting loans short, and we haven't seen players break through for a while? Obviously, Lucien is in a good position to do that. But would it have been beneficial to leave him on loan? Obviously, Boston have made it to the final of the playoffs now, so that's another 3 games he would have got as well. So do you think we should be letting these loan players sort of have their loan time rather than keep chopping and changing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was very bizarre that we brought him back, especially when you consider he made, I think it was after the man of the match performance from him as well. So even more bizarre to bring him back. But, I mean, there was obviously some form of agreement there where he was guaranteed to play some part of the game because he came on against Widescreen. You wouldn't bring him back otherwise. To be fair, I wouldn't have done it anyway. I mean, we were playing for nothing anyway. So why we could have just used anyone else on the bench. But it's happened now, and it would have been much more beneficial to leave him there, especially when you consider them being in the playoffs and they've just beaten Scunthorpe. Obviously, they beat Alverton as well. But it is what it is. I'm sure he'd be disappointed, but what can you do about it now? It's a club that makes the decision, and it was made for him. And unfortunately, it probably weren't the one that he wanted. But I definitely think in the future, if we're in that sort of situation, just leave the player there, because he was clearly not only appreciated there, but he was also playing well. Because you don't get man of the match having a bad game at the end of the day, do you? So, but no, it was disappointing for him. I'm sure he's disappointed, but it's football.
Yeah, no, definitely. For me, I don't have a problem with him being recalled as long as we actually play him. If we record him and he played every minute of every game since being recalled, it makes sense. You're getting a look at him for the next season. But to bring him back and then gets a couple of minutes on the bench, it just feels a little bit of a strange decision. But anyway, moving back onto the retain list, Aiden Baldwin, probably the one that was the most debated before. Probably the one that has sparked the most comments in terms of. I haven't seen too many people actually say we definitely should have kept him, but a lot of people saying they could have done or would have done. Not outraged, but they probably could see the other side. And I think I can definitely see both sides. But I wanted to get your opinion. I asked you a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, if you would keep him, and you said yes. What are your thoughts? Now that it's been announced that he is going to go, what do you think of that decision?
Well, I was surprised. Don't get me wrong. I think when the first thing you see in that tweet was obviously the graphic, so you see who's leaving, and when you see Aiden's face, you wow. But again, as much as he's a good footballer and was good for us, end of the day, the amount of mistakes probably cost you just as many points as he's won. So, is it harsh? I don't think so. Clearly, the club are going to have a defensive overhaul in the summer anyway, so it's just one of them. But I think what he's given to the club in terms of the goals against Bournemouth, etc. You can never there's not been a bad message towards him today after he's gone. So says everything you need. But am I surprised? Yes, of course I'm surprised, because he's still a very good defender. I think he'll get another League Two club, no doubt about that. But it's good to see that the club are moving on from these players, because I don't want to say last season was trial and error, but it's basically what it's gone down as. And we had to make changes, and like I said, this one was big, because if there's any defender in the back line that you thought might get kept on or at least offered a new deal, it was probably Aiden, and he hasn't been. And I don't think that would have been his decision. I think that would have been the club's. And it's surprising, of course, it's surprising, but it's good, very good to see the club moving forward positively, and it's also gave you a little hint that we're going to have a very defensive overhaul, which is rightfully so as well. So very exciting. But again, all the best, Aiden.
No, definitely, I agree with you there. I think he was the one that, I couldn't call it. And I was a bit surprised, obviously. I think there's two things to say. Obviously, well, three things really. Firstly, the playoff semi-final, some of the greatest moments we'll ever see. So, got to thank him for that. Another thing as well, he is a very good player, and can be a very good player. And like you say, I've got no doubt he's going to go on to another League Two club. And I've got, there's still part of me that thinks he could have played some sort of role. And I saw people saying that it would have kept him for sort of squad depth. But I don't think Aiden's the type of player that would want to stay as squad depth. I think he knows that, say we offered him a deal. I'm not saying we have, but say we did offer him a deal and said, look, you're going to be fourth choice centre back, or you're the first choice if someone drops out. I think he'd probably go elsewhere, and he will have offers to play elsewhere, first choice. I have no doubt in that. But I think what it is, you've hit the nail on the head with the excitement. I think it shows and proves that we're going to go for some. I mean, Aiden's a big part of the back line. I'd imagine he's on. He dropped from League One to National League, so I imagine he's on decent money. It probably means we're going to be in a marquee defender, which I really would quite like. And what I think it also signifies is that we might go after what I believe is what we need is someone who is perhaps isn't as good as Aiden Baldwin is on his day, but also doesn't make it, isn't as poor as Aiden has been on certain days as well. Someone that's kind of a little bit more in the middle, more solid, more dependable, and someone you know what you're getting from every single week. A bit like Lewis McCarry, I guess. And that's with no disrespect to Lewis. He puts in a 6, 7, 8 out of 10 every single week. And I think that's kind of what we need, rather than the fluctuation of a 9 or a 10 one week and then, dropping down quite a bit the next. So it'll probably bring some more consistency. But like you say, I wish Aiden all the best. And I'm pretty sure we'll probably come up against him next season. And hopefully we'll give him a good welcome back at Meadow Lane. Another big player that left, John Bostock. Obviously, another player that scored in those playoffs. I can see from your reaction already what you potentially think of it. So I know this one's probably a bit of an emotional one for you. So I'm just going to sort of give you the floor and let you run with it, because I know that he's a player that obviously means a lot to you.
Well, again, look, you've hit the nail on the head there. To be fair, I expected it. Don't get me wrong, I expected it, but it's not been. It was horrible to see. It's kind of one of them where it's that moment of realization when you realize that this guy ain't going to be there next season, and it was horrible. I remember just sitting there in the lecture that I was in early on. I was like, well, that's disappointing. But John, for me, the best character that this club's had since I've been around, and that's been the past decade now. I can't remember anyone who's came and had the sort of impact he has. Maybe it's a bit biased because, again, he sent me that, but it was a very powerful message, but it was also at a time where I needed it most. I was kind of just dwelling on my career. I'm not afraid to admit that I was pretty content where I was at. But ever since I did that with John, it was kind of just a decision where I thought, right, let's just write about a player. And I picked John. And then, obviously, the article did very well. And then John, that was when he followed me. And then he messaged me. And ever since that, I've never looked back once. And that's the thing for me now. John's gone. And I actually messaged him earlier. And he got back after I finished playing football. And he said something along the lines of, all the very best on your journey too. And God bless and everything like that. And for me, he's just the best guy. It's obviously not just coming from me. You've seen it, the Jolie's farewell. Saying that he's the best guy he's ever met in his life. Dan Crowley as well. He's just, for me, John is I always thought he was a special guy, but after he did that for me again at a time where I'm not saying I was I went in a bad state at all. I was just in one of them ones where I was just content and I didn't really have any motivations to do anything. And then that message kind of just woke me up and made me realise that there's still so much to prove and achieve in what I want to do. And he did that for me, and that's why I always hold him in the highest regards. And I know you said it with, obviously, the past players who have left, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it with full confidence that one day it will be me, Tom, and John Bostock on this podcast together. When? Who knows when? But I'm making that happen, and I hope he does it for us, which I have absolutely no doubt that he will, because that man is special guy, man, special guy, and it's obviously going to be sad to see him leave. But I hope he's in League Two next season, because again, I would love nothing more than for him to come back and get a reception from Meadow Lane, because just transform the club, mate. The whole morale of last season kind of lifted that extra 10% when he came in, and yeah, I think he definitely was one of them who suffered the most from the Williams departure as well. I think that was evident. He went from a very heavy fans' favourite and very good on the pitch to a heavy fans' favourite, but barely on the pitch. And that was the biggest disappointment I had of how his time ended. But that National League season, he was special, absolutely special. That partnership with Matty Palmer was special. That Wrexham free kick was special. That Wembley free kick was special. His penalty at Wembley weren't special, but you can let him off, I guess, because look where we are now, and he's left us in a better place than he found us. So fair play. And I just hope that he somewhere he'll be successful again, because he's a brilliant guy, honestly, man.
Yeah, I think you made a great point there. Without him, we wouldn't have been promoted, quite literally with the free kick, because I don't think we would have got back into that game without that free kick. But also just the lift he gave us, that 10%, like you say, it did really give us momentum. And at one point, it looked like he was going to give us the title. And that momentum gave us a bit of, it just gave us a little bit of extra something, didn't it? Throughout. So, he's a player I'll miss. And like you say, I kind of expected it, but it's still was emotional seeing a lot of the posts. Obviously the free kick and that being posted again, and look, there are moments that will last a lifetime. And also, he has written himself into the club's history like that. That free kick in the final will forever be in the club's history, and he's written his name into that. So, whilst it perhaps didn't end the way that we would have wanted, he has got that moment, and we'll cherish that. Finally, another man who has got plenty of them and is an emotional departure, Jim O'Brien. Again, I'm just going to give it to you and let you talk about him, because I mean the guy is we've spoken about it recently, but for us he's a club legend, and I don't know if anyone's watched the leaving interview, but even think about it now is getting me emotional. It's really sad to see him go. I want him to get one more year, as I said before. And yeah, over to you, mate, because I don't think there's enough words to do Jim O'Brien justice.
Yeah, and it's hard even now. Obviously, you've given me the floor to speak my mind, but like the Jim relegation season, he comes in, gave his all. There's no doubt about that. And then obviously we didn't get over the line, but I mean, he even said himself he was looking for a home in football, and he found it at Medellin. And you could tell. I mean, obviously there was that spell after where we was in that sort of financial trouble and he left, but then he did re-sign straight away. So clearly he never wanted to go anywhere other than not. And again, the 4 years that he gave us in the National League, you always knew that whenever he came on that pitch, he'd give everything for the football club, and that's why everyone loved him. Everyone loved him initially because of that, and then there's so many moments you can speak about. Obviously, he was the goal scorer of our first goal in the National League. And, obviously there's obviously countless things you can think about with Jim. But again, the thing for me is right with him, and this is the one thing that always stick with me about him, and how much it really meant for him to play for this club, was the fact that he never got a minute in the final against Chesterfield, but it didn't bother him in the slightest, because all he cared about was getting up. And the fact that we did, that's all that it meant to him. And when you've been here 4 years and you've been through the fight and obviously the battle that he has for the football club to try and get us back to the EFL, it's playing a game where you are literally a win away from doing so. Obviously, it would have been a big deal for him, but he didn't sue. And we got our reward. And obviously, in the end, that's all he cared about. And it just shows he was obviously not through and through at the end of the day. I always said he's like it's like an adopted version of the one of your own, when obviously they're not one of your own. But Jim, he definitely feels like he's one of Notts' own. And I mean, the tattoo. I mean, look, how many players have left Notts with a tattoo about them on them? Not many. Whether it was a drunken decision or not, I don't think it's one he regrets. But like I said to you, I feel like this is obviously pre-planned. He signed a 1 year deal when everyone else signed 2. He clearly wanted to have one more season with Notts in League Two. Obviously, he joined us in League Two. He got relegated and he went back and did a full season with us. And he's obviously left now. And I say he's left, but I should have said 4 now, because this definitely ain't the last time you're going to see Jim at Notts. I think his heart is absolutely destined for this managerial job. And I'm not saying, let's rush obviously Maynard out. I really want Maynard to be successful, and I feel like if you put the right tools in place, he will be. But I do think Jim O'Brien, there is a key reason why he hasn't stayed. And if you think about it in a deeper perspective, if he joined the coaching team and Stuart Maynard left or got sacked, then where does Jim go? Does Jim stay and then wait for new managers to come in and see if they fancy him and we'll keep him on? No, of course not. He's going to go somewhere. He's still doing his badges at Sheffield United. He's going to go somewhere, and when the time comes up for Notts to have a new manager, Jim is going to put his name into that mix. I have no doubt about that at all. And mate, I would love it. Honestly, I would love it. You can just see it. It's a perfect fit. And he even said in this statement, it's not a goodbye, it's a see you later. He's not done at this football club, and that's why it's emotional now. But I just know there'll be, there'll hopefully be a time. I'm sure of it. There'll be a time where he's back, and I can see it. I can just see it. I'm even in my head now. I'm envisioning the passion in front of like packed out away days, where he's like fist pumping in front of the crowd. But like I said, mate, it's not a goodbye, it's a see you later. This is chapter 1 of the Jim O'Brien story, Notts County Fit closed. Chapter 2 is pending, and I feel like he knows that. I feel like the club know that. And the best thing you can do now is just stay close with the owners. Sounds cliche. I'm sure they've already got a good relationship, but I know full well that the head coach role at Notts County is something that Jim O'Brien wants, and he won't say that now. Obviously, of course, he won't. And I personally think, right, he'll go to Woking, because I feel like there's no where else really would Jim end his playing career under obviously Michael Doyle, who he spent 3 or 4 years in the midfield, heart of midfield with Notts County. I feel like it's the perfect fit for him, and I hope he does. I genuinely hope he does, because I don't mind Woking, and I don't want to see Jim finish playing, but I do know for sure, and I'm sorry this is long-winded, but you gave me the floor. You did give me the floor. But chapter 1 of the Jim O'Brien story, Notts is finished, and, pick that pen up and pen me chapter 2, because I'm already ready for it, mate.
Yeah, I've got no doubt as well that he will manage this football club again, because he has already managed this before for one game. So I've got no doubt that he will be in that dugout once more. And I think you're right. He'll go somewhere, get the managerial experience, but it almost has his name written on it, that role. Let's get on to transfer listed players then, because that isn't where the retain list ended. There were 3 players listed for transfer. Aiden Stone, we'll start with him. Obviously, the goalkeeper situation has been one talked about all season. Aiden Stone has been put up for transfer. What did you make of that decision?
Look, this is probably where people will agree with me or they don't agree with me. I feel like Aiden Stone was a culprit of very bad defending. That's how I've always viewed him. I feel like he was brought in to be first choice, there's no doubt about it, and he had his confidence shot massively when Williams decided to drop him for Slocum in the Mansfield game. And it happened again, I can't remember at what stage, but I just feel like he was a massive culprit for really, really bad defending. And if you're going to, I'm not saying, obviously, some goals may have been preventable by Aiden, don't get me wrong, but when you've got defenders making them sort of mistakes in front of him, you have to feel some form of remorse for him. And I do really hope that he comes back in pre-season with almost a chip on his shoulder and a point to prove, because I do think he's a good goalkeeper. Definitely a confidence player, but if you put him behind an assured back line, what he's got confidence in, you will probably see the best of him. And there's a reason why this man has been promoted out of this division. He's not a bad goalkeeper. And look, people might disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. Football is a game of opinions, and I completely respect that. And will not sign a new goalkeeper? Absolutely, yes, they will. But I don't know if it. I just think Aiden's first year at Notts County has been one that has been massively blamed on him in terms of what we like. Surely you understand where I'm coming from when I say, because there's only so much you can do as a goalkeeper. I know it's cliche, but if a forward makes a mistake, the midfield mops it up. Midfield makes a mistake, defence mops it up. Defence makes a mistake, it's on the goalkeeper to mop it up, and when it's past the goalkeeper, mate, you've conceded a goal, and it's a tough old world as a goalkeeper. I have felt sorry for him this season, Aiden, massively, because I just feel like he's had some of his confidence massively shot, and I just think it's been really harsh, really, really harsh to see how he's been treated. Obviously, people have different opinion on him. That's fine. My opinion of him is that he was solely blamed for really bad defending, and when you consider the fact that the back 5 kind of obviously I'm excluding Jody and Aaron from this because they really put a foot wrong. Obviously, they gave away a few penalties, but the culprits would lie in the middle of it. Let's not take that for granted. But I feel like Aiden was massively blamed for really bad defending. Deep down, is a good goalkeeper, but I just don't think he's favoured anymore. Maybe a move away would probably be the right thing, but I feel really bad for him. I do. And people might disagree with me, people might agree with me, but that's what I believe in, and I'll stand by it.
Yeah, I think one thing you hit the nail on the head again with is the fact that he lost his confidence after being dropped, and I think that was a decision I didn't really agree with at the time. I think you should stick with your keeper, really, and look, I'm not saying it would have gone any differently if he hadn't have been dropped. Things happen for a reason. But yeah, I think he's one that is definitely goalkeeper such a confidence position as well, especially. And if you lose your confidence in that position, it's going to be very difficult to get it back, especially with the like you say, defence that hasn't been extremely tight at times this season. A defender that we're going to talk about, Connor Rawlinson, was also transfer listed. Again, just want to get your thoughts on that one, because obviously another player who's been a really good servant for the club, similar to obviously Brindley and Jimmy we've spoken about, been at the club for quite a while now, but looks as though he's going to move on this summer as he's been transfer listed. So yeah, what did you make of that decision?
Proper. Well, obviously the decision is probably right. Rollo again barely played. Move him on, probably the right time. But again, another player who's been massively loyal, very fighter mentality. Obviously, I think if there's anyone on this podcast that knows that, I think it's you. Not to remind you of that, but that is the reality. That did happen, unfortunately. But obviously, I think you can obviously agree with me here that he has been a very loyal servant to the football club. And is it the right? It's pretty much the same as Brindley, and it's the right time to move on. That's all you can really say. Again, when you're out of favour as such in the back line that made so many mistakes and weren't great, one of the worst in the league in terms of statistics, it's probably your time to move on. Football's a career, and footballers want to play, and Connor will want to play. End of the day, and yeah, he's one that you can never ever question his loyalty to the club. I think we gave everything for the club, especially in the playoff season. The one last season as well. Didn't play all of them, to be fair. One thing I will say is, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will agree with me, if Rollo had played in the first final against Harrogate with Lacey rather than Ben Turner, would have won that game. I still don't know today why Neil Ardley decided not to play Rollo. I don't get it. But in the end, he got what he deserved, and that was the day out at Wembley, and he played a massive part in it, and we won. And, that'll be the day he reflects on about his time at Notts County, and rightfully so, because he deserved that day again. Another very loyal and hard-working servant in his own right to the football club, and again, someone that I absolutely wish all the best.
Yeah, no, definitely wish him all the best. Obviously, hasn't gone yet, but if he does, and then I wish him all the best. And another one that obviously will probably want to fight for his place in pre-season. But like you say, it does feel like he's a player that want to play. Like you say, he's got the mentality that he'll want to play games, and that's ultimately been decided that it's going to be away from Notts. Another player who, a bit like Aidan Stone, actually only joined this season. Will Randall was the final player who was transfer listed. What did you make of that? Because Aiden, obviously, we've seen quite a lot of this season, even though it's been his first season. Will Randall, it feels like he's been here 5 minutes because we haven't really seen him. And he's our first signing back in EFL. One that will probably go down as one to forget. What do you make of Will Randall's time at Notts? And obviously, he's probably going to be one of the first ones to move on, because I do think people will take him just because of the fact that he has had a good career prior to Notts, but obviously his last 12 months haven't probably helped his stock really.
Yeah, I'm not going to be harsh on him because he don't deserve it. What I will say is, on paper, obviously, first signing of being back in the EFL looked good, especially when you look at the clips, etc., and all this and that. But in reality, it was the first of many really bad signings this season. It has to be said. It's not harsh. We pride ourselves on being honest on this podcast, and to be honest, I'm being honest. It has just not worked out at all. No doubt there's probably a player in there, but it's all about finding. A lot of the players that have left us, such as your John Bostock, they've always spoke about finding a home, and I feel like once Will Randall finds that, he will enjoy football a lot more, get a lot more game time. He'll probably be a very good player for that football club. Hasn't worked here. Don't expect to see him in pre-season. I think it'll be, to be fair, he'll probably go back to somewhere like that, the National League now. He'll probably tear it up down there. But yeah, there's no future for him here, unfortunately. And even in the times he's been given to prove it, I don't think he's done much of that. So yeah, right decision to transfer list him, and hopefully it's someone we get off the wage bill.
No, definitely. And that leaves us with a squad of Sam Slocum, Tiernan Brooks, Carl Cameron, Lewis McCarry, Lucy Mahovo, Adam Chickson, Jody Jones, Aaron Nemain, Matt Palmer, Scott Robertson, Dan Crowley, Sam Austin, James Sanderson, Corey Langstaff, David McGoldrick, Junior Marias, and Alassana Jatta, and of course Kevin Scott as well, who's extended, and possibly Geraldo. from you guys, we want to know. We're going to be looking at maybe in a video with transfer targets. We want to know from you guys where you think we need to strengthen, and we also want to know if there's any names in particular that are jumping out to you that you think we should. It might be a player you've seen this season or last season. It might be a player that you think could return to the club. It could be anyone that you think that we should be looking at. We'll read some of your suggestions out as well. And also, before we go, I want to remind you that the code NTTA10 is available for your stickers. Obviously, you might want to get stocked up ahead of next season, or if you're going on your summer holidays, you might want to take some and make Notts go, international with your stickers and spread the Notts love worldwide. But I want to pass over to you. Any more closing thoughts on the retain list and anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't think that this would be, like the reaction on social media today has been brilliant. It just shows that although these players, didn't have the best season, everyone loved them, and I feel like that should be really key telling point to anyone, any footballer out there who future signings. This is a place to be. Yeah, end of the day, this is a Notts County Football Club, mate. Not many people will ever get the privilege to play for it, but a lot would love the privilege to play for it. So if you do get that privilege to play for it, come in and have the attitude of Jim O'Brien. Come in and warm to the fans like John Bostock did, and want to commit to the club like your Rawlinson and Brindley did. That can be my only message, because the club's special, mate, and I do think we are onto something good next season as long as we get it right. But we've started off on a very ruthless foot, and it can only mean positive things are coming, mate. Because you can kind of see already where we need to sign. Don't take a genius to work it out. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot to look forward to. Obviously, we haven't spoken about in this episode, but obviously there's still Matty Palmer's come back into it as well. There's Matty Palmer, Scott Robertson. Dan Crowley's best form of last season was when Matty was in the team. That was obviously when Robbo weren't there. I just think we've got a lot to look forward to. Obviously, again, it falls down to the same thing. Will Joey stay? Will he not? Will Macca stay? Will he not? And whether they do or don't, although they had two very good seasons last season, everyone's replaceable. We'll get good fees, and if they do stay, then wow! I mean, what a team we can have, because we're going to build regardless, and this football club will always build in preparation to have both these players at the start of the season next season. If they don't, they'll always have a plan. Whether that plan needs to work. But I'm going to stop talking about that, because that's for a future episode. But yeah, it's been, what you could say, a sad day, really. We've seen a lot of people leave, but it's all for the right reasons. And time to look forward, time to move forward. Like you've touched on, people won't have seen this because we had a conversation beforehand, but it won't be too long now until clubs start signing players, and who knows what's going to happen. But obviously there's the fans forum on Wednesday as well. I will be in attendance, so maybe we could throw an episode for Thursday about that, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of key talking points, and I'm sure you'll get a firmer understanding of where this club's going, or trying to go. But there's a lot to look forward to. There is, and who knows what's going to happen, mate? Who knows?
Yeah, well, hopefully everyone's enjoyed a slightly different episode, and like you mentioned there, fans forum and signings coming up, and keep your eyes peeled for other things, maybe some more guests. Who knows? But we're going to be keeping things coming and slightly different, obviously, because we haven't got games to talk about, but still plenty to talk about. Still lots to talk about, to use the name of the pod. But yeah, I just want to thank you all for the support. It all means a lot. Obviously, another episode, the last one with Eli, has been the support on that is absolutely brilliant. If you keep subscribing, it helps us massively to grow and get more people listening, and just helps us get more guests on and do the things that we're trying to do. Obviously, those of you listening on Spotify as well, we spoke about before we came on air how we're really happy if you could hit a review as well. We've got quite a few on there. It really helps us, again, just getting more exposure and more people to listen. But I'm going to stop talking about that stuff and let you wrap us up. But thank you all for listening to slightly different episode today.
Yeah, look, Tom nailed it there, really. We are looking at getting more guests on. I'll give you a little disclaimer. I have sent some emails out to, well, actually, to be fair, I'm not going to name the name who gave me an email for a certain somebody, but shout out them. If I know they watch the podcast, they'll know what I'm talking about. I don't want to give too much away. I like to tease it on social media. I did a good job with Eagle Eye. But I think the next one, I think we might just keep under the wraps and just drop it unexpectedly. I don't know. It depends how much I can resist not, dropping a tease, which will probably be an absolutely 0% chance. So you probably will see a few. And just quickly, if you're wondering why there's a shirt behind me, which is, you might be, you might not be, because there's never normally a shirt. There's an awards night on Friday night at our university awards night. Me and producer Char going. So if you see any drunken, not to talk about content, we can only apologise in advance because, yeah, it could happen. It could happen. But again, if you guys keep supporting the podcast, I don't think it'll be the last time I have this shirt on this year, because I'm pretty sure this podcast, we're about to in our own hall. It shouldn't be too far away from a content awards as well. Hopefully, when they come out, we'll be nominated, and we'll all be in suits down there. Who knows? But that's something we wanted to achieve when we first set out, and again, with the support of you guys, it will happen, no doubt about it. So keep supporting the pod. Keep on sharing us, subscribing, following. Thank you so much for 400 subscribers on YouTube and 800 followers on the X account as well. We're trying loads of different bits. We've got so many plans. I could keep talking to you all night if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I've not had my dinner yet. And you know what? I feel like this is getting a bit too general chatty now. I'm just going to wrap it up by saying thank you so much, not only for the support on the podcast, but for sticking with us, watching us every week when we weren't doing too well in the season. That means a lot to me, Tom, and Charlie. And yeah, just keep your eyes peeled, because obviously all three of us are going to take some form of downtime off in the summer. Everyone's worked hard this year, but we have a lot of plans for the summer, and you are going to enjoy it and hopefully not get bored of us. But until then, until the next episode, which is going to be very soon, no doubt about it, massive thank you once again. Come on, you pies.